We will just wait another minute or two and then go ahead and begin today's webinar. Really excited for today and for next week on our transportation series for students. Just so you know, for the flow of today, we're going to have Taylor speak, and then we're going to have our panel discussion. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know during that portion of it, either by writing it into the chat, or I will open it up to everyone at some point as well. So again, you are going to be able to have that opportunity to ask our panelists. Okay, I guess we'll begin as others join us. So we'll just start with thank you all for attending our weekly Women in Buses webinar. If you are new to this webinar, we are made up of over 300 members from the travel and tourism industry. So we are sharing any issues that are currently affecting the industry is our goal of our weekly webinars. And we also have social media that we're very active on Facebook and Instagram. We also have a LinkedIn page. If you guys have anything that you want to share with us at any time, please contact us. We're always looking for ideas and we'd love to hear what you want to do. So just going to go over next week's webinar. I'm super excited about it to continue our student transportation with the focus on motor coach. Next week, we'll be joined by John Meier from Badger Bus, John Miller from Miller Transportation, Brian Cole from Super Holiday Tours, and Chris Saravo from Travel Insured. So we invite you back next week again to ask any burning questions and see what's going on with student transportation in the motor coach world and hopefully a return to that. Just wanted to remind you of some upcoming webinars we have for our different committees. They are separate than this weekly Wednesday webinar. They do require a separate registration. The first one we have is for our Executive Management Committee, and that's on August the 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and that is an introduction to DISC with Peter Shalbo. And again, if you want to sign up at buses.org under the Women in Buses events for that webinar. Then on the 26th, it's the Operations and Maintenance Committee webinar at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's on pre-employment drug screening. And then the 27th is the Travel, Tour, and Charter Committee meeting, and that's on the science of storytelling. So we're really excited about what we have upcoming that week for our different committees. If you are not currently a member of one of those committees, you can certainly join, and we do welcome you on any one of these dates or all three of these dates. It doesn't matter which committee you're signed up for, you're just welcome to be on them. Okay, so I'm so excited to introduce our first speaker today. It's Taylor Hannon is joining us. She's the associate editor at School Transportation News. For those of you that don't receive that magazine, you certainly should. They are my go-to resource of everything that's going on with student transportation. So Taylor, I welcome you to unmute yourself and begin.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm the associate editor. I've been there for about 2 years now. And School Transportation News, for those that are unfamiliar, we cover what's going on in student transportation. Our website is down there, and then we also have a monthly magazine as well, and we hold some conferences throughout the year. So here's some points that I kind of just wanted to touch on, you know, what we've been covering during the COVID-19 pandemic and what's kind of going on in school transportation. So in March, obviously, school shut down, and so everything was, you know, when are schools going to reopen? So we talked about meal delivery and then using school buses, Wi-Fi hotspots, and then school bus driver pay. But now the last couple of weeks, we've kind of been focusing on what reopening is going to look like for transportation operations. We have a list of state guidance on our website. So if you go to the footer of STN Online, safety resources, we have all 50 states, and you can click on your state and you can access the guidance and how that's going to, impact transportation operations. And then we also have like a list there so you can go straight to the guidance as well for your state. It's a great resource. And all 50 states have released their guidance, so that's there for you guys. We also have a Go link, so if you just wanted to go to stnonline.com/go/SG, it'll take you right there. But so that's what we've been focusing on. What does reopening look like with these safety measures in place? What's actually interesting is what happens if school districts don't open and decide to go fully online. So that's definitely been the case now in several counties in California. Los Angeles Unified School District just announced that they're going to be doing in-person learning. So what does that mean for transportation? So I'm working on that. An article will be up online soon. But state guidance has been released that says, if you can't reopen and you are going to continue with online, continue to do that meal delivery. Equip your school buses with Wi-Fi hotspots so that you can bridge that digital divide and more students can access internet. I was actually talking to one Arizona transportation director yesterday, and he shared that he's actually worried if it's up to local districts to decide whether or not to reopen, as he is worried like people are going to steal teachers and drivers from him, right? Because if you're online and another neighboring district is, open for in-person education, that's a big fear. And if that happens, he's anticipating losing 30% of his driver workforce based on a reopening schedule. So that's definitely something to consider going forward. And then kind of branching off from that, last week, the long-awaited STARTS task force was released, and STARTS is Student Transportation Aligned for Return to School. It's a joint endeavor from the 3 national associations. So National Association of Pupil Transportation, National Association of State Directors of Pupil Transportation Services, and the National School Transportation Association. They got together and they released a toolkit for reopening and the impact that will have on transportation. So it wasn't necessarily like recommendations or requirements, which I think a lot of people were looking for. It was more of a toolkit. So it's a very comprehensive, easy to use Excel spreadsheet. And we do have an article online, so you can access that, and we have links to all the information there. But they released 27 core guidelines and then tasks associated with those guidelines. So you, as a school district or transportation director, you can go and kind of, okay, what tasks are going to be relevant to my operation? And you can kind of go through and decide how that's going to affect. Is it going to be costly? Or do you have enough resources available? And what type of population is this task specifically for? So with that, they also released a Gantt chart, and you can go in, assign those tasks to certain people, and implement a start and ending date. And they noted that this is super beneficial for contractors in school districts who are partnering and working together, as contractors can go in, set the start date, set the end date, and then, the transportation director or supervisor can actually monitor that process. So super interesting. And all that stuff is on our website, so you can just go online and find links to what you're looking for. Switching gears a little bit, we've definitely been covering, school bus drivers and their responsibilities. So whether that be with health checks or wearing a mask, monitoring students, we've seen a lot of pushback from drivers on our Facebook page, kind of saying, oh, this isn't possible. If I'm gonna be required to do these additional requirements, like, is driving even worth it? And I was talking to a school bus driver yesterday in New York, and her story is online as well. And she said it's hard enough to get the students to stay in their seats. So monitoring mask usage is like a whole new story and a whole new set of requirements. But with that, we've covered, how communication and culture is super important during this time. And what's going to keep your drivers is that transparency and that communication. You know, we had an article in the June issue that talked about Operation Morale and how constant communication and transparency is super important. Also coming out in the August issue, we're talking about virtual training. So that's not just a tool that students or teachers can be utilizing. It's something that transportation operations can utilize as well. One Oregon transportation director shared with me that it's not necessarily about the training, but just getting her drivers on and her staff on in a video conference and just seeing their faces, talking to them and catching up with how they're doing, that's going to go a long way. Then the last point that I wanted to touch on was the emergence of new technologies. So technology is the focus of our September issue, so there will definitely be more there. And I'm going to be writing an article on school bus Wi-Fi hotspots and how they're going to be used to bridge the digital divide kind of going forward. But we've also covered, you know, artificial intelligence and its role in temperature checking students prior to boarding the school bus, you know, how technology is helping there. How technology is helping in the terms of app implementation. So, you know, did the student get on? Okay, they're on the bus. If someone contracted COVID-19 on the bus, we know who was on that bus at this certain time and we can notify those parents. And then also in the July issue, we covered routing. So how is technology helping routing with these different what if scenarios, you know, and we've seen that a lot of transportation directors are just kind of routing for, you know, what they know, what's normal, and then based off of the information that's coming out. So whether the model of education the school district is choosing or the safety recommendations and requirements going forward, they'll be updating their routes based off of that information. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover in terms of what the hot topics have been this past, you know, month or so. But I also wanted to provide some statistics if we want to go to the next slide. Okay, perfect. So these were sent to transportation directors and supervisors in June. So they, you know, things could be different, but this was kind of the feeling back in June, what people were thinking. 47% said they're not feeling any, you know, feedback or fear from drivers, monitors, and parents and students. So that's always a good sign. And then the next one kind of talks about, want to go next slide. The use of PPE. So for drivers and onboard transportation staff. This is probably shifted as more state guidance has been released that saying, you know, strongly recommended or required that drivers wear some sort of mask or face covering. So I do anticipate that this is probably shifted, but this was captured in June. So this is kind of what was thinking then. And then the next slide does talk about student passengers with masks. And this is actually really interesting because 49%, you know, answered, I don't know. And I was actually talking to a Texas transportation director. And so he transports 3,500 students a day on a normal day, right? So you times that by 2 trips, a morning and an afternoon, because I mean, you can't really expect every student to hold on to their mask throughout the entire day and keep it clean. So if you don't include extracurricular activities, you know, he would have to provide 7,000 masks a day for student riders. So if you multiply that by the 180 days, that's a lot of masks that the district would be required for to provide. And that's over $1 million in just students that he told me. So that's not including, you know, the cleaning, the disinfecting, masks for employees. That would just be for student riders. And then obviously with, you know, 332 respondents saying they're anticipating a budget cut and or spending freeze for the next school year, you know, how is this going to happen? So that's kind of what we're exploring going forward, you know, the costs associated and, you know, what transportation directors are thinking, you know, how are kids going to get to school if school is online or if in person, excuse me. So the last slide is talking about some opportunities that School Transportation News kind of has going forward. We are actually offering a virtual bus technology summit, and that's going to be in September. It's 100% free for attendees. And then we also have our STN Expo Indy, and that's going to be merged with the TSD conference, and that's in October. And then the STN Expo Reno is scheduled for November. One other opportunity is we have weekly podcasts. So I encourage you guys to tune in. We have a different guest every week, and they're talking about new things and student transportation, what's going on and how that pertains to school startup. So that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of what I wanted to touch base on. And thank you guys again.
Thanks so much, Taylor. And I definitely recommend the podcast for all of you who have not been listening to them. They are excellent. They're available right off their website, but I subscribe to them on Spotify. So they provide a lot of useful information of what's going on throughout the country. Okay, so now it's going to be time for our panel, and Taylor's going to stay on to join us for the panel portion of this webinar. So I'm pleased to introduce today's panelists. It's going to Taylor John Meier from Badger Bus, Pam Martinez from Dattco, and Alison Klein Sherman from Klein Transportation. I work for a school bus motor coach company, Bloom in Massachusetts, and we're still waiting to see what the fate of our school year is going to be. That information is due next week to the state, and they're considering 3 models that they all have to submit, what a virtual model would look like, a return to school, and then a hybrid approach. And so again, we're still waiting on that information to see what's going to happen with us. So if we could just get started here, if Alison, if you could just tell us a little bit about your company and what's going on in your area.
Sure. So Klein Transportation has been providing student transportation services for Daniel Boone Area School District for over 60 years. Our school district, much like yours, your area, is looking at 3 different models. They've come up with, in Pennsylvania, we have a traffic light model on what we can do in our state. So we're currently in green, which does not mean completely go. It's kind of like roll slowly. So it's more like your normal yellow, but with a regular traffic light. But with green, schools are allowed to go back into session, and Daniel Boone School District is looking at returning normal if we continue to remain in green as a state. However, the guidance that the Department of Education has put forward says that only 2 students per seat. So maximum capacities on the school buses are going to decrease. In the event that Pennsylvania moves to yellow, which requires more restrictions, then they're looking at a hybrid model where half of the students would go to school one week and the other half of the students would go to school the next week, and they would alternate each week. That's going to be a lot of fun for our drivers, but we'll make it work. Our school district does the routing. The transportation department at our school district is in a transition right now. So they're working on their routing, but they do not have their normal plan routing completed yet. Once they complete that routing for if we go back normal, then they're going to start working on the routing for if they go back in the hybrid model. So that's kind of where we sit right now.
Thanks, Allison. I mean, I know that we're all experiencing the same multitude of challenges going on.
Yeah.
Pam, can you give us an insight of what's going on in Connecticut with Dattco?
Sure. Connecticut has decided that they are going to be opening as scheduled, and the rule for the school buses is full capacity. So they're not having restrictions on seating at all. They are requiring for all drivers and monitors and students to wear masks at all times. The requirement is also for a monitor to be on every bus. We're waiting to see how that's going to work out because the order says that it's to be provided by the Board of Ed. And of course, the Board of Ed's, saying, can you guys provide this? So we're waiting to see how that's going to work out. But the Board of Ed's in each town, and we do about 30 different contracts. The Board of Ed's in each town are required to submit what their plan for education is going to look like, whether it's giving parents a choice or they're distancing in the schools and all that. And that's due on July 24th. So we're expecting to hear a little bit more, but the direction on the school bus has already been set. But what that means is we don't know what our capacity is going to be like because we don't know what each board's going to be doing. And so right now we're really in limbo because by now, obviously, it's along with you, you other folks on the call have already done your routes. We don't even have names to do our routes yet in many cases. So that's going to be quite the challenge getting the routes done at the last minute. We hear that the boards are encouraging parents to drive their kids to school wherever possible. So we are expecting low capacity on the bus, but we are not limited.
Great, thank you. And John, could you fill us in about Wisconsin?
Yeah. First of all, if you don't know where Wisconsin is, we're right next door to Czechoslovakia. So just, those East Coasters, I know you guys don't think about us too much out here. Hey, Pam, just a quick question for you. I didn't hear you say this. Are they offering virtual too for Connecticut?
They are, yes, but the direction is all schools are to open.
Yeah.
So that's up to the district to decide whether they're going to offer virtual in addition to, but not in place of.
So, I mean, I don't think we're a lot different here other than our biggest district is Madison. They announced they're going to go virtual for the first 2 months, but we're hearing that we might be going to every elementary school. It might be more like a daycare kind of thing. Some of the younger kids that really need to get out of the house or need something. Not sure what that all is. We've also hearing our special ed might be fairly substantial. So we don't know how much work we're going to have there. We're still waiting to hear on another contract. Like the first, everybody I'm sure that's doing this, we've gone through every scenario. I mean, we've looked at, 2 days on break, 2 days off, 1 week on, 1 week off. The one thing we have done is we have gone through and just tried to develop all of our routes like we did the previous year just to get that done. From there, I think most of the districts, they realize it's probably best to work that way because a lot of your drivers are trained. You can do something a hybrid off of that. It's awfully hard to go back and just, redo this out of the box. It's going to be, especially with the late notice we have. So, I guess, some of the things I'm going to say, just like you have to be communicating with your superintendents and your business managers. They have to know your problems. So they're talking about them with their boards right away. That's got everything to do with how much money you need to make it, what kind of information we have to give out to our drivers. They have to be transparent and let us know what's going on so we can continue to communicate because we're hearing all these stories about drivers that don't want to come back. So all those things are really, really important. So in a nutshell, we're as fluid as everybody else. I know we're virtual, but I don't know what that means yet. And we're trying to staff up and hire right now. And so, we're even trying to figure, we still have people that are laid off. We're supposed to be bringing back a number of managers in the beginning of August and might not do that now until once we figure it out. Maybe we need to wait a few more weeks or something like that. And then the other thing is we don't know what's going to happen with unemployment yet. That's a key factor that's going to determine how well we're going to be able to get people in the seat to drive. So I guess that's it, as much as I got for now.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, everyone is facing the same set of stresses, maybe just a different way, but the unknown every day is certainly, I think, the biggest challenge. that, you know, you can't fully put any plan in place because we're not sure what is going to happen. And Kim wrote in that all schools are opening in Georgia, and then for the first 9 weeks, most counties are opening via virtual, then face-to-face possibly in November. So I think that goes along the same lines with what you said Madison is doing as well. John?
Yeah, Madison's plan is to go virtual through October, and then November you'll go in. But you know, we have the University of Wisconsin here. They're already talking about Thanksgiving. They're done. All the kids are gone. You know, we're concerned that we're even going to be running in November. To be honest with you, I can see a scenario where we're probably doing a hybrid. You know, and of course, you know, we're this pandemic is very interesting. It's different in every state, and I don't mean it's different. The virus works the same, but the politics are different. Wisconsin, we're county by county, so our rules change. There's districts in Wisconsin that have already announced they're going full school back. They're 80 miles away from us, and yet we're virtual here. You know, so it's really interesting. And so, you know, I mean, every state's different. It's nice to hear Connecticut is really can make that decision by the state. We can't. That was decided in our Supreme Court of Wisconsin. So really, every county or district, they're going to weigh all those things out on how we proceed along.
Thank you. So I know it was kind of briefly mentioned a little bit, but what are the challenges that you guys think that you're going to experience for driver shortages?
I can start. One of our biggest concerns is our governor has said that anybody who is at high risk or is over the age of 60 should consider not returning to work and continue to file for unemployment, and they'll look at a case-by-case basis. But the goal is to let people to continue to stay on unemployment even though they have a job to come to. So one of our goals that we go after when we're recruiting are retirees. So we have a huge, huge workforce of people who are over 60. And then we also have people, you know, that, you know, are high risk or have family members that are high risk. They're including those as well. So that's going to be really, really challenging. And we are really committed to doing a ton of communication, and how we're trying to overcome that is by making sure our employees know we're going to have a safe working environment for them to make them feel comfortable coming back to work. We started this, you know, quite a while ago. We put a task force together made up of HR, risk management, operations, and marketing, and we developed a plan. We developed a plan that went to all of our Board of Eds of, you know, what we're doing as far as, you know, our protocols for cleaning the buses and all that. And then we put an internal plan together of what are we going to do in our facilities. And that includes, you know, unfortunately, removing the driver's rooms, taking away the tables, the chairs, the coffee pots, all that nice stuff, the TV. And with the focus of we're doing this because we care about you, and we're doing everything we can to make your environment as safe as possible. We're going to have a safe working environment for you. And you know, one of the things that came up is there's a big emphasis to make sure every terminal is going to be spick and span clean. When you walk in, it's going to smell clean. But that's about perception, because these facilities have been closed for months. There's no coronavirus there. But when you go into a place and it smells dingy, or there's dirt or whatever, that's not giving you a secure feeling. When you walk in and it's bright and it's clean and it's been painted, and you feel, I think it gives the perception that that you have a safe working environment. And that's really what we've been focusing on. The communication out to the drivers. The first and we've set up email. We got people's emails, and so we have the ability to do email blasts. We have text messaging for our employees, so we can send out a text message, and we have an employee portal. So usually what we do is we'll send a small little message on a text message and referring somebody to our employee portal. This week we're supposed to be going live with our real, you know, heavy communication, which is from our president, that basically says, you know, paraphrasing, but we love you, we miss you, we can't wait to see you. That's like the warm and fuzzy. And then how hard the team's been working to create this safe working environment for you. And we have a series of videos. We have safety kits, and we're gonna, on the video, you're gonna see the safety kit. Every driver is being given 5 masks, goggles, a bottle with cleaning disinfectant, a rag, gloves, hand disinfectant, and it's all in a nice little kit. So that we're doing all this so they know what to expect when they come, and giving them a sense that we're really protecting them. And then we have, every driver has to go through coronavirus training. I'm sorry, corona awareness training. And what that is how to clean your bus, how to, what to expect when you come to work, what are the safety questions, the health questions to make sure you're safe, going to be safe to come to work and not infect other people. So it's kind of what we're doing. I kind of went off task a little, answering what we're doing but that's how we're trying to overcome the people that we're concerned aren't going to return back.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect thing. I mean, it is about reassuring the drivers that they are going to be safe, because that is half the battle. They're our front line. So, doing what you need to do to get that to happen. We've created videos as well. And actually, if you walk into our training room, I've never seen so many gloves and sanitizers, and the entire room is just filled with all of that. And that's our daily life now. But Allison, what if you think that you're going to have a driver shortage this year?
So we've had a number of drivers reach out to us. Well, we have a weekly Zoom chat with our drivers that everyone's invited to attend for both our school bus and our motor coach drivers. And we're getting a lot of questions about what the school is requiring and what the school is going to have the kids doing. So we've gone over with our drivers what we're doing on our end for them to keep them safe. But there was still a lot of question up until last week about what the school was going to be requiring and whether or not the students were going to have to wear masks. And that communication, there was a panel or a group that met with the school district, including a representative from our company, to create that reopening plan and what it was going to look like. So we're communicating by email to all of our school bus drivers, sending them a copy of what that exact plan is from the school district so that they can read it for themselves. And we're following up with phone calls to each individual driver. But what we had been hearing from our drivers is that their decision as to coming back or not was going to have a lot to do with what that plan looks like. I am concerned that we're going to lose a lot of our senior drivers. I'm concerned that we're going to need more drivers because of the reduction of passengers on the buses. We're still waiting to find out how that's going to look. So our school buses, most of our school buses normally seat 72. We're able to seat 44 on them because we did tell, part of what we insisted on with our school district is having the front row on both sides of the bus open and blocked from students so that there's extra space between the driver and the students to help the driver feel a little bit more safe. So with the 44 passenger reduced capacity, how is that going to look if they go back normal? Part of the reopening plan, the school district sent out just yesterday a survey to all of the parents asking them for their student's name so that they can hold them to their decision, but do they intend to use this school provided transportation services for their students? As of yesterday afternoon, about 60% of the respondents were responding that they were going to take their kids to school themselves. So that will help with that reduction in passengers. So we're still kind of waiting to see, are we going to need more drivers than what we already had? And of the ones that we already had, how many of them are going to come back? So as we make those phone calls in this week and next week, we'll get a clearer picture. We just wanted to have it be a personal touch instead of a group communication for that question.
Thank you. I mean, John, I know you and I have had some conversations along those lines too, that you see it in your area that that's going to be a challenge for you for drivers, correct?
Yeah, actually, I got some thoughts just based on what everybody's talked about. You know, really good information, and I agree with everything. And I always want to follow up on a few things as far as, like, you know, bringing people back. You know, we are really trying to make sure that our drivers are not going face to face with dispatchers and operations people. I mean, they're really going to be working independently. So that means having porta potties out in the lots so they don't have to go to the bathrooms. That means they're scheduling a meeting. They're either via the radio, they need to go in there. It's just going to take a lot more planning. We're doing texting too. I mean, all those ways of managing training is all going to be mostly virtual. You know, those kind of things are really important. I think the other thing that you mentioned too that I thought, which is really interesting, and Alison, what you're talking about your drivers, you know, I completely agree with that. You're not going to have a lot of people in the beginning, but as you're successful, it's not going to take long, and mom and dad are going to put that kid on the bus. I think it's going to be a little bit different. Everybody's on guard in the beginning, just like when we first went out with it. And I was 100 feet from anybody and wouldn't go into a store. We're getting more confident as time goes on. So when is it that kid now is going to start showing up? When are those passenger counts going to start going larger? The other problem that we're talking to our districts about too, with that 60% that might not be riding, is you can't get in the schools half the time. The parents have the lots just packed. You know what it's like on a rainy day when they drive all their kids and you're trying to get in, you're always running behind. So they need to be thinking about that at the districts. How are they going to route cars? How can you get your buses in and maintain your times when that many parents are driving? And so just some thoughts I wanted to throw out there. As far Pam, I mean, I can't believe that messaging that came across from, you know, about 60 and older for drivers. What a hard thing to try to fight. That's 3/4 of our crew, you know, that's driving here. So that's a really tough battle. And I think the only way you're approaching is exactly that way. They got to feel safe. I will say this, I think that this is so fluid. I mean, we're hearing this about teachers, you're hearing this in the unions, and you're going to hear from the drivers. A lot of them don't know yet. They haven't made up their minds what they're going to do. And it might come down to that last day. You know, even though you're doing everything, it's just going to be that gut reaction. It's sitting there and they're just not sure. And we just have to do our best to be prepared. And our superintendents and everybody else has to know that too. We're doing our best. That's all we can do, is do our best. And, you know, and we're going to have to adapt for what we have, because we just can't control this normally.
You know, John, in addition to that, you know, how do we get the drivers to stay with us? We've had a lot of discussions about retention bonuses and whether we should do it or not. And actually have a meeting this Friday to finalize it. And I think that I'm very confident we are going to offer a retention bonus, but we're going to phase it out. And what we're going to do, or phase it in, what we're going to do is, initially the topic, it was, okay, let's say, you know, October 1st, you're going to get X amount and then, you know, paid throughout the year. And instead of doing dates, what we're going to do, for anyone that's thinking about it, is school days. Because we may get into school and then school could be canceled after the first week. And if we put out, we're going to be paying a bonus on October 1st, you need to pay that bonus on October 1st. But by putting school days, if school canceled, we're not going to be strapped with having to do that. So we are looking at doing that as well to help entice the drivers to come back.
It's a really good idea.
So we have been, for several years now, doing our safety bonus for our school bus drivers based on the number of days that they worked. So we pay it every 45 days of school. And the last payment is paid at the start of the next school year. So the last 45 days of school are, the bonus is paid at the start of the following school year. And that's kind of how we've incorporated that into a retention type thing as well.
Hey, do you mind if I ask a question? I don't know if this is on some of the questions, Aaron, you had, but are you guys going to pay a driver if they actually contract it and they have to stay home? Have you promised them you'll pay them? And or does your state is going to do workers' comp? I believe there's 3 states that are now saying there's workers' comp available currently. What do you? So you're not going to pay them if they get sick? That's your plan.
Connecticut actually, it hasn't been signed yet, but the governor has said, and there's representatives that are endorsing that if somebody contracts COVID, that it needs to fall under workers' comp if they were at work. And initially it was, the way the wording was, is that it gave the employers a lot of ways out of it, that, if they could prove, if an employer could prove that it wasn't at work, so there was some proof, or actually the employee had some burden as well. And now they really changed that. And we're really concerned, because that's going to, I'm pretty sure that's going to go through. And it really gives very little room to say it didn't happen
Right.
at work.
Right.
So that's, the concerns just keep piling up.
Well, that could go both ways, though, can it? I mean, in some ways, you have assurance that they have at least some way to get paid.
Right, but
The other one is like, if I get sick, if I'm going to be in the bus and I get sick and you're not going to compensate me if I get COVID, regardless of where they got it, they may not come back.
Well, it's more than that, though, and that's the concern. So let's say someone dies from it, or someone's in a hospital for 5 weeks and on a ventilator. So the insurance companies, if they're going to be on the hook for every COVID case that comes up of everybody who has a job, that's going to have an impact on when you renew rates. Yeah. So it's not just about, if it was just about paying the driver while they're out, that's fine. But that it's so far, there's so much more to that.
Right.
Yeah, thanks. That was definitely on my list of things. So to go along with that, what are your policies, or have you received any from the state on, handling students on a bus with COVID symptoms? For Massachusetts, we just got guidelines Monday on that and what the proper protocol is. Have you received any information on that?
I'll start off. We've not had any guidance, really any real guidance on that. We actually we're doing summer school, and we found out 3 days later that a child tested positive, and the school never let us know. They did end up quarantining 2 other kids that they were close with, but this summer, fortunately, they took pretty strict guidance. We can't have more than 12 people on a bus, so they're very well spread, very well ventilated. Everybody's wearing masks, so didn't feel that. We notified the driver and the bus attendant, but that was that, and that's as far as that went. Those kind of things need to be hashed out, and we're kind of doing this a little bit by the seat of our pants right now. We've had people tell us that, hey, my husband's friend tested positive, and he spent some time with him like 3 or 4 days ago, and he wasn't real close, but I just want to let you know. So what does that mean to me? What are all those situations that are close or whatever? How do we react to those? How do you make this less gray and more white and black on those stories? And those are going to be really difficult things to do.
It really is. And the fact is You're going to find out after the fact that you've had somebody with COVID. It's not they're going to get on the bus and say, I have COVID. I can't imagine, but I guess anything's possible. But one of the things that we're talking about, again, is, minimizing risk is, loading from the rear forward. And then when you get to the school forward, the front of the bus gets out. So you have less passing of people. We're in the same boat as John for summer school. We have a maximum of 11 kids per bus. So the summer school, they're really spread out. But we had one school that started 2 weeks ago. And one weekend, they had a student test positive in school. And they shut the school down for the rest of the week. They're reopening on Monday again. So they were just quick, just shut it all down. So I think, we're going to see a lot of different reactions. Some school districts are going to be, I think, very quick to react, and some others maybe let's try and keep this just as, low key as possible, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they're learning too. I mean, you can just see that situation. They shut the whole school down. I mean, how are you going to have school if that's the case? I mean, it's really, I'm sure we're all hearing about temperature checking. They're going to be checking every kid as they come in. I mean, we're already hearing they're building little infirmaries to put people if they're have a fever and trying to work through their protocols in school. And if you're going to have school, I mean, they're almost going to have to do that. Otherwise, I don't see how you can eventually, you're going to make it. There's too many positives, and if everything starts shutting down, then that's going to be difficult to do. Not saying it's not the right move. I'm just saying it's going to be hard to do.
How are your states or districts handling cleaning in between runs? So our state Department of Ed put out guidance on Thursday saying that they're recommending cleaning in between runs. So in between the high school and the elementary, which theoretically makes a lot of sense, but realistically, how do you get in that short period of time all of your buses disinfected? So our school district is now saying that they would like every bus fogged in between high school and elementary. There's just not enough manpower to get that done. We've reached out to outside services to get quotes. They've all said there's just not the manpower to get it done in that quick of a time, because you need to have time after the fogging for that fog to dissipate before you have passengers on the bus again. So I'm curious if your Department of Eds are recommending similar, or how are you guys handling that?
So our Board of Eds, in many cases, were looking for us to put a plan together, which we did. And how our cleaning protocols going is, as I said, we're supplying these kits for everybody. And so everybody has a spray bottle that has the disinfectant in it with a heavy duty cloth. And their instruction is to saturate the cloth. And we're doing only the tops of the seats. So you walk the bus anyways looking for children. Yeah, on your way down, you do the tops of the right side of the bus, you turn around, you do the tops of the left, you do the handrails, high touch areas, and then proceed on. So it's not like we're not doing the seat backs and everything in between. It's just the top of the seats. And then at the end of the shift, it would be, a more thorough cleaning.
Which is certainly realistic. And that's what we presented as well. They don't feel as though that's sufficient.
We're doing similar. Well, there's no way, Alison, that can happen. Yeah. It's not possible. So we presented the same plan, and we also told them, when we talked to them, we mentioned, and we would love to be able to go through with our guns and spray these things between every route, but there's not enough time to do it. So here's what we're going to do, and we're going to do a really good job of doing this. And it's exactly what you're doing. We're going to go through a spray bottle. We're not wiping though. We're going to be spraying in between, and we do it exactly. Park the bus when all the kids are off. You walk back, and then as they're walking back up, they'll be doing that spraying. That's in between the routes. after the routes in the morning, we'll be using the high-tech guns and spraying them once a day, really disinfecting them really well that time. But there'll always be that, I guess you call it contact. We're not really doing contact, but other than maybe some of the rails, and if we were to switch drivers midstream, we would contact the cockpit area. But that's how we're going to do it, and we haven't had any problem with that so far. That's actually how we're doing it. We're doing it that way right now in summer school.
Yeah, we're doing it very similar. After our first year, we're spraying down the same thing, same concept. I mean, it is realistically all that you can do and continue school on a schedule. Now, Taylor, you wrote an article that I read about Wisconsin and putting barriers behind the drivers. How does everyone feel? Is that feasible? Is that something anyone's looking into?
In Pennsylvania, the state police had told us that they would not pass school buses for inspection if they had a barrier in place. However, there's somebody trying to pass legislation now to change that ruling, but till that would all get processed. So as of right now in Pennsylvania, we're not permitted to put a barrier up.
Taylor, have you seen that anywhere? Have other states joined on to that, or is Wisconsin really kind of the only one?
There are some states that I read in the guidance that said, if you get approval or if your Department of Motor Vehicles allows it through the inspection. But I did talk to, Wisconsin specifically about it, and they, have this whole guidance that they kind of released that if you are going to install a barrier, it needs to meet these select qualifications.
Yeah, we've looked at it. It's pretty pricey to do. We've been holding back on a lot of expenditures that just making sure we got school kind of looking at these things forward. We don't want to, anybody who spent a lot of time with me lately kind of use this, one in hand versus two in the bush a lot. We're just taking that one in hand right now until we really see our path. And it may be something that we address, on a case-by-case basis. You may need to put something like this in for a driver. We all know the safest thing that we have going for us in a school bus with passengers is we have fantastic ventilation. So, keeping those windows cracked, probably even doing it in the wintertime. We're going to have windows down a little bit, leaving, kids are going to be a little bit colder, but we're just going to have to do that. Districts are talking about that kind of stuff. The other one, if you saw Wisconsin did, is, they've also allowed us to put hand sanitizer in the front of the bus, boarded the seats. So we're trying to figure out, where we can do that. Makes a lot of sense for a kid to be applying hand sanitizer when they're walking on, because we don't know how clean their hands are when they get on that bus. Don't need it when they get off, because the first thing they're going to do after they get their temperature checked is put more hand sanitizer on their hands before they go into school. So, so we're really focusing on that part right now, not so much the driver barrier, but we may be, but right now we're not. We've looked into them. They're really pricey, and some of them I've seen a few pictures of different ones. Some of them we can't get. There's a lot of back orders on anything with plexiglass and that kind of stuff. So we'll just have to see.
So I don't mean to turn this into a sales call. That was definitely not my intention, but Dattco also has a sales and service division, and we have great fabricators. And early on when this first hit, they did an enclosure for paratransit style vehicles that was really slick, and it was well received by DMV. And then the different districts around, different senior centers, people operating the paratransit vehicles, were really interested in it. It's been a big hit, and it does absolutely give that driver a definite sense of security. From there, we've developed something that can go into other types of vehicles for school buses that, that really provide another shield as well. That's not as sophisticated, but so they have great options. And I don't know the price of them off the top of my head, but when I saw them, I'm like, wow, these are, you know, they were cheaper than I thought they were going to be. So, you know, if anyone's interested in it, again, make sure your state's going to allow it. Connecticut is. I would encourage, you know, feel free to check out Dattco's website for their sales and service division. And as far as hand sanitizer, you know, we can do the shields, but we can't have hand sanitizer on the buses. The drivers can have a personal one on them or in their personal belongings, but hand sanitizer, they say, is flammable and not allowed on school buses. So every state has their own little quirk.
Yeah, there's so many liability issues on everything. So that's the biggest, you know, that and all the additional costs and making sure that things can be put in place on time. I mean, there's a lot that everyone wants done in a short amount of time, and it's being able to do what we can in order to make the safest experience possible. I can certainly ask you guys questions for another 5 hours because this is very interesting to me, but I just wanted to open up and see if anyone had any burning question that they wanted to ask our panel before we wrap it up today. If you do, if you want to just unmute yourself right now, you can do that and ask the question.
Hey, Aaron, just a statement. I think you should let people know that I think you're planning on doing another one of these, you know, once we start operating, which would be, you know, really helpful, right? And like maybe early September, you're going to offer one.
Yes, but I haven't got a chance to invite my panelists back yet. But yes, as long as they're committing to it, yes.
Don't take a vote because then that way I won't get invited back. But I'm sure there'd be different ones too. And I think, you know, I could go on here the same thing as you and listen to everybody. It's you know, I think you know, Pam's, you know, the Dattco's running and we're running. We're getting some experience here, but it's going to be, we're going to learn a lot in September, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I can certainly think no one ever thought that school would be gone for this amount of time. I mean, that was always the given. Well, school will be back. Well, school will be back. Well, school will be back. And now we have no idea. So does anyone, if anyone had a question though, if you, again, go ahead and feel free to ask it right now.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So a question was related to perhaps let's just say the hypothetical scenarios if you are transporting any students and a student becomes infected with COVID, what is the policy or procedure that you are going to have with your employees to notify them? And are you going to have to ask them to be tested and all of that?
Pam's waiting for me to jump in there.
I can jump in, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you know, that's a tough one. We feel like we have to be transparent. We definitely want to know this information. We want to let them know. You know, we're hoping that people will go get tested. It's going to depend on, I mean, video is going to be big to see if how close they are to a child. We're going to learn a lot more. We're going to work with the district to see what they're suggesting. You know, so like if, for example, the district feels they have to, you know, take the whole bus and for some reason why, I mean, I guess we'd have to be looking at that. That's not been our experience yet. There, in this particular case that we had where the child tested positive, there was only 2 other kids on that bus that they quarantined with the other one that tested positive. And, you know, we informed the driver and the bus attendant and, you know, left it really up to them if they wanted to. I don't think we can force them to do it. You know, I mean, I don't know what there's not a lot of guidance on there. We've had some kind of open discussions on it. I'm curious to what Alice and Pam have got figured out there.
No, I agree with what you're saying, John. You know, first of all, you know, in Connecticut, as I said, both the passenger and our driver has to have masks. They're going to have masks on, and you know, how the close contact. You know, they're not having that close contact. It's, you know, walking by, getting off the bus. We're going. I think, you know, like I said, we're even having goggles. We're having gloves. We're having all this stuff. So when they're cleaning down, disinfecting, we're protecting the drivers. But certainly we would make sure that they're aware, and if they would like to go for a test, certainly they can do that. Now, if the person, was for some reason had to attend to the kid and was close to the child and had the close contact, that's a different situation. And again, this is when the cameras are going to be really a great asset and help us through that process to figure out, were they in contact with them or not? Are they truly at risk or not?
I would agree with what they said. I think that another factor that falls into play with this is the privacy. And now I'm blanking on what the privacy term is, but there's privacy regulations that have to be kept. Yes, HIPAA, thank you. Yeah, so with privacy, what information we are able to share with our drivers about what passengers on the bus contracted that may be very touchy. So it may be that we can say a passenger that was seated towards the front of the bus or in the middle of the bus or in the back of the bus, but to be able to give specific information on who that was that contracted it. If the school's the one that finds out that it's contracted, we may not even know that specific passenger name. So that'll play a factor as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we might. We very well might not know who that kid is. In fact, that particular situation with the summer school, they didn't give us the kids' names.
Can I ask also one other question? Sorry. The other question is related to, are any of your school districts or contractors asking for you to have waivers provided at the beginning of the school year to any students who are going to be transported? If, let's just say, in the scenario where parents had asked or were polled, are they going to be transporting their child directly to school site, or are they going to be utilizing your school services? Are they going to be required to sign off on some type of a waiver, because they are all minors, and something that's going to state that there's an assumption of risk for allowing them or choosing to be transported by school bus?
I have not seen any waivers from any of our districts or heard of it. It still could come, but at this point, I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
Same here.
Well, thank you guys so much for that. Just trying to get clarification for us here in California, because we're the guinea pig state.
Well, you guys will have it if anybody will.
I know. The crazy thing is the school districts are actually asking us to draft something to give them, to let them know what we're doing with the charter services. And that's supposed to help them and guide them into what they possibly will be looking at. So I thank you guys for your answering those questions.
Thank you for asking them. And definitely I would, again, I'm just gonna not just promote her just because she's on, but definitely keep reading school transportation news, because they are constantly updating everything with, the latest information is what's going on in the different states. So we certainly appreciate that, Taylor. So I think I will go ahead and kind of wrap up today then. I truly appreciate you all being on today. And I think today's discussion was so needed. And as John mentioned, I'd love to have you all back, maybe end of September, if we can find a free moment or an hour or so to kind of see what's been working now, what's changed since our last discussion. And I know that I'm sure everything's going to have changed by then, and what we're all doing differently and what we've learned from that. So just to kind of wrap things up, if you are not a member of Women in Buses, we really encourage you to become one. You just need to send an email to wib@buses.org and to get yourself on there, and you can join any one of our committees. And please follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And again, we'll be back next week with a focus more on student motor coach transportation. So we'll have a great panelist for you then as well. Okay, thank you so much again for attending today, and we really appreciate all of your panelists on today, and thank all of you. So have a great day and we'll see you back next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.